Welcome back, everybody, and thank you for joining us. It's now my great pleasure to introduce our next speaker. Presenting for Neoen, Australia, the Mount Hopeful Wind Farm, please welcome Elise Wise. Elise is Neoen's Australia's Mount Hopeful Wind Farm's project manager. She is experienced in the renewable energy industry and has worked across several disciplines, ranging from technical research to remote maintenance work here in the Australian outback. She's best known within industry for her contributions to cloud forecasting across the national electricity market and has supported development of large-scale wind and solar projects in all Australian states. Please welcome Elise Wise.
Thanks all for joining me, folks. My name's Elise. I'm from Neoen. Thank you for the introduction, and I wanted to talk to you today about the Mount Hopeful Wind Farm project that we have in Central Queensland. Breeze through as quickly as I can a quick introduction to Neoen and who we are as a developer. So we have an international presence. We are a French company and publicly listed in France. We started off very strongly as a solar developer. We've made quite a few grounds in storage, and a key focus moving forward for us is also to bring the same amount of capacity into wind farms. So we run across all three renewable technologies. Our presence spans the Americas, Europe, Africa, and Australia, with a significant presence in Australia. What sets us apart from other developers is that we develop to own. So we own nearly 92% of our generation fleet. And that means that my job at Neoen as a development manager is really just the start of our relationship into the local regions that we work in. So once we've gone through the permitting process and come up with a design for our wind farm, the next key phase that we manage is financing, and one of our key strengths. We have a very strong access to both debt and equity injections. We oversee the construction with the appointment of a key EPC contractor, and then we oversee the operations for a wind farm that would be a 30-year life. Just a quick rundown of our track record and some key facts. So our total operating fleet our total operating or under construction fleet is reaching 5.4 gigawatts as of last year. Interestingly, 48%, or just over 2.5 gigawatts, is sitting within the Australian portfolio. So Australia is a huge focus for Neoen. We are the number one French independent power producer of renewable energy, and we're the same actually in Australia. We have a target to get that 5.4 gigawatts to 10 gigawatts by 2025. What does our presence look like in terms of projects across Australia? We're probably best known for the Hornsdale Power Reserve or the Tesla Big Battery. But you've probably heard quite a few rumblings recently in the news about the South Australian Goyder wind farm moving into construction, which will be a huge project and one of our first developments, actually. We've also just recently turned on the Victorian Big Battery. And our presence in Queensland is currently mostly known for two projects under construction. We've got the Western Downs solar farm just south of Chinchilla. And we've also got Caban Wind Farm in the very north of Queensland, which is under construction now. I think as of last week, we had 3 turbines erected at Caban. We do have 5 offices with a local presence in each state that we develop in, but our 2 main offices are in Sydney and in Canberra. I've put in a quick summary of those 2 projects I mentioned in Queensland, the Western Downs Power Hub, which would be 460 megawatts, so a massive solar farm going through construction at the moment and scheduled to complete towards the end of this year. I also put in a quick rundown as well for those who want to do a bit more reading into the Caban project. That's actually a picture there of the first blade lift for the first turbine in Caban. So we're going through the very intense construction phase at the moment for that one there. This one's got 28 Vestas turbines, a PPA with Clinco. And it also involved a network upgrade as to the first RES upgrade in the northern area of Queensland. So let's get on to while you're all here, the Mount Hopeful Wind Farm project. So I am the project development manager for this project here, and we've been working on this one from greenfield, or from the very start, since about 2018. The project is located equally between the LGAs of Rockhampton and Banana Shire, and almost smack bang in the centre of Rockhampton, Gladstone and Billawella. The site stretches across exclusively grazing land and freehold tenure. And as you can see there on that red line running through there, we've actually got some really easy access to an existing transmission line backbone, a 275 kV line from Powerlink, which is one of the two key reasons as to why we've gone into this area. The other, of course, being the wind, and also a low population density. But we do see this project as being able to facilitate a growing need for energy demand in the future within the Gladstone region, mostly due to industry expansion. I thought it would be good to show you a few pictures. It's pretty hard to show pictures of such a large area, but we've got a combination of vegetation and sort of grazing paddock grasslands. We do have quite a few weeds on site, which has been a key focus for us in how we go about land management, even at this stage now where we just have contractors coming on to conduct studies, but also how we manage that moving forward. We do have some pretty difficult terrain at Mount Hopeful, and so one of the key focuses we're going through now with design is just making sure that the civils design makes sense and is doing the best we can to get the trucks up to the turbine locations and to minimise cut and fill. So that's one of the key challenges that we've got, and we're working through that now with this project. Our development application map is on the right-hand side there. As you probably see with most wind farm developers, we start as big as we possibly can, and then we move down in terms of the capacity of the project. And we're still working through that final design process and understanding the exact capacity that we can construct. So we would estimate right now that between 50 and 70 turbines will be constructed on this project. At the moment, off the shelf, turbines are reaching about a 6 megawatt capacity. That's pretty big, but we could get up to 7 by the time we go into construction with this one. So the total capacity of the site would be ranging between 300 and 500 megawatts, to put a range on it. We've put in hard maximum dimensions for our turbines, and then we can go with anything lower than those dimensions. So that's a hub height of 170 meters. The blade length could be up to 90 meters, and the maximum tip height of blade plus tower would then be 260 meters, and our studies are based off those dimensions. It's a bit textbook, but I think it's important to talk through what this life cycle looks like for a wind farm. So we're in this 3 to 5 years of development phase, or intense development phase. That can start earlier with wind measurements. We've been measuring since 2018. We've secured options to lease for this project. We've undergone community engagement sessions, and that activity tends to ramp up further towards pre-construction and post-approvals. We are in our decision notice period for a development application, and we've been determined as a controlled action under the EPBC, or that large federal approval that wind farms need to go through. So we'll be progressing through the approval phase with that one moving forward. We also need a grid connection agreement, and that comes through with Powerlink as part of that final design process prior to financial close. Neoen at the moment has about 70% of its generation fleet contracted under a power purchase agreement, and we'd certainly target a power purchase agreement with this project here, with currently the remaining 30% of Neoen's fleet under merchant. I would expect at the moment that a second half of 2023 is our best bet to move that project into construction once we've met all those conditions under the development section there. A 2-year process to construct 50 to 70 turbines is about average. We would however, consider that to be the entire construction period. And so that means that we've got, really the challenge of construction for a wind farm is getting some really, really big kit up to site on vehicles and then craned in to where they need to be. And so a lot of the immediate work during construction of a wind farm is civils, road upgrades, and then it comes into pouring concrete for the foundations of the wind farm turbines. Once all of that is ready to go and we've got the ability to bring in the turbine components, you tend to see sort of a near constant stream of turbine components coming in. And I would imagine if we worked over a 2-year construction period, you'd see that coming in the very centre of that period there over a consistent 8 to 10 months. One of the key reasons doing that is you don't have 50 to 70 cranes to put together 50 to 70 turbines, so you do stagger the approach, and you don't want your blades in particular to sit on the ground for too long after delivery. So it's a very quick process to go from delivered on the ground, sometimes doesn't even touch the ground, and then they get craned straight up to their position. We also include the connection registration process with Powerlink and with AEMO, and then the commissioning process as part of that timeline. And so there's several months there where it looks like not much is being done anymore because the labour's done and everything is physically built. And we need to go through the gradual phase of turning everything on and testing that everything is going to be operating safely on the grid. Our operations phase is 30 years for a wind farm. That means we'll be signing an operations and maintenance contract and overseeing the enforcement of that contract. Agricultural activities continue during this phase. We kick off our annual community benefit fund, which I'll talk a little bit more about. And then after that 30 years, we've got an obligation to decommission that wind farm, both due to our planning permit conditions and our legal enforcement of our land contracts. But we would, if we were to secure a new permit for the wind farm and to extend our land contracts, to basically go through the phase we're going through now again, we could look at the option of repowering. And that basically means most likely changing out the blades and perhaps enhancing some of the equipment on site and giving the wind farm a new lease on life. It is more common these days globally to repower a wind farm than it is to take it down after 30 years. A quick rundown of the economic benefits. I think given we've got a range that we're targeting for capacity of 300 to 500 megawatts, I've tried to give a range of how that would look in terms of translated benefits. The total capex for that injection of investment would be $600 to $750 million. We would be looking at 220 to 300 jobs created during construction. We would be looking at 200 to 320,000 homes powered based on the average consumption of a Queensland home. But also, the other benefit of this project is to also facilitate the growth of industry. The overall operating jobs on a full-time equivalent basis would be 8 to 20. And most of those jobs, if not all of them, would need to be located within the region. And that's where we look at, hiring and supporting locals within the community. The economic boost, I'll go into a little bit further as to how we measure that, but a lot of the benefits that do come from that injection of capital, investment and labour and hands into the community actually translates more to flow-on benefits with requirements for food, accommodation, and other levels of support. I also wanted to just talk briefly about the other initiatives that we have in terms of our relationship with the community, because I'm aware I'm probably speaking to a lot of people from Central Queensland, if not from Rockhampton, Below or Gladstone areas. So the immediate tangible benefits that we look at is the establishment of a community benefit fund that kicks in during operations. That range again of 300 to 500 megawatts would translate to a range of 1 to 150,000 per annum during the operating life of the project. It's based on the revenue that we can foresee from that final capacity. Some of the other things that we've been working on is establishing a school syllabus. That's a Neoen-wide school syllabus, but is particularly targeted towards Australian schools. And we've targeted the age audience of 8 to 14 years as a start. So you can go online now and Google Neoen's Learning Hub and have a play. I would suggest adults have a play as well because it's pretty fun, about how wind farms are designed, how batteries work, and how solar works as well. We've been going through the local schools around all of our projects, including Mount Hopeful, and sharing that syllabus with them as a start. The other thing that we've been focusing on a lot over the last 2 years is in increasing our capacity to engage with Aboriginal communities and to do that effectively. And that includes celebration and incorporation into our projects. One of the initiatives we've just recently gone through is commissioning an Aboriginal artwork at the wind farm towers erected in Morgana in Victoria. Let's go through local participation. So this is our word for everything from local jobs to economic benefits that we can bring into the region. And that includes contractors on an individual basis, but also suppliers and businesses that we can engage with, and greater networks within the industry. Almost every developer will tell you they've got a community engagement plan. We break down our community engagement plan into specific plans, and one of them is targeted just around local participation. I've put through the opening sentences that we include as a framework to establishing those plans. We do a lot of work in terms of researching the specific context of each project, and so our LPP will be different to target the different demographics and context that we can see within each project. But the overarching themes that we have with every local participation plan is the idea of a procurement register, and I'll go into further as to what that really means. We conduct local supplier sessions, very similar to community sessions, but targeted towards jobs, networking, and getting the word out. And we also enforce targets onto our key contractors. We don't directly perform the subcontracting arrangements. So what we do is, from the outset of our tendering process, we work with our contractors to show them what we need and where the bar is in terms of hiring locals. How do we define local in those targets? This is very similar to Queensland's industry best practice requirements. We come through with a tiered grading system, with number 1 being the immediate localities. So for that project, that would be any of the townships lying between Rockhampton, Billow and Gladstone. The second one is a regional context, and that would include all of those LGAs, even up to Central Highlands Regional Council LGA. We then go through to the third tier, which is to hire within the state. And there is an enforcement there of criteria that we need to understand as to why the state of Queensland, or number 3, became was where the hiring process took place. That 1 and 2 were first attempted to source those skills. I thought I'd go through a quick case study for Caban because it's currently under construction now. So we had that identical 3-tier approach as to how contractors need to go about their hiring process to meet the targets. The targets that we had there were back-to-back with the Northern Australian Infrastructure Fund specifications. So it was actually targeted towards a very tailored approach for this project. That included 30% of project hours to be worked by locals under the criteria above, and 10% of those hours to be fulfilled by trainees or apprentices. We also had Indigenous engagement targets, and that was 5% of the balance of plant work hours, everything other than turbine technical employment, to be enforced, and also an Indigenous business procurement target to hire Aboriginal owned and operated businesses. I can't tell you that we're still going through construction, so I can't guarantee you that we've met all of them, but I can tell you now we certainly are. It's given us a really good grounds as to how we can go through establishing a similar set of targets in Queensland for the Mount Hopeful wind farm. I can tell you how we've finished with the Bulgana wind farm, because that one is now constructed and operating. Every time we finish a project, we go through an independent assessment with Oricon to understand how the injection of capital and the employment actually did stack up. And so this is just a quick, I won't go into every single figure, but just a quick rundown of how that wind farm went through the economics assessment during construction, and also now that it's operating. And one of the key things I think is really important is that that difference between the capital injection in the dark gold versus the almost tripling in flow-on impact to the local community. What does our process look like when we say we're conducting local participation engagements? We have this idea of a supplier register, and it's a key deliverable for us. It's something we've created now, and it's up on our website for people to come and register. But it's a living document. We also hire a local officer to help us with engaging within the local area, engaging with local councils, businesses and agencies, and enhancing that document and that register. The key requirement for us is to get as many names and important information about the local context into that register, and to pass that register over to our EPC tenderers from day one, so that they've got a very long list of numbers to call and capability statements to get started in quoting and hiring. We then go through the appointment of an EPC contractor, and that would be coming through just prior to construction, so 2023 activity. That's when you'd see the local participation sessions ramping up, with us actually bringing in the likes of Vestas, GE, Siemens, or a similar turbine supplier. Once that appointment has taken place, our EPC is responsible for maintaining that register, and we work with them to appoint a local participation manager to report on targets and how everything has come through the chain. Just very quickly, how do we go about that right now? What's our job right now? It's meeting with local councils. I would definitely suggest that local businesses get their name in front of council as well, because councils have a huge focus on making sure their economic development branches are linking correctly with major projects and putting names in front of us. It's also Aboriginal groups within the area and any regional economic development bodies. The research that we undertake now is quite wide, and so we'd be going from anything from accommodation options in the area, quarries, to cleaning services, who might be able to provide us a food truck on site. This list is not exhaustive at all, but just to show you the breadth of research that we try to undertake. What can you do? We have our register under that URL just there on our Mount Hopeful Wind Farm website. You can send through your details and they'll be automatically registered. We also have a nice big list there to show you the breakdown of roles that we're going to need, particularly during construction. We will eventually move that into a formal ICN gateway portal once we've got a contractor established. You can come to us and we're very happy to assist you in preparing a capability statement, making sure you've got the credentials you need to get noticed by our contractors, and strengthening your application. So please feel free to. I've got contact details at the end. And just before I finish, if anyone wants to know a little bit more about how wind farms are constructed or how we go about economic funding initiatives, and also what the ABC likes to think of our economic outcomes at the Numurkah Solar Farm, we've got a YouTube channel with a good range of videos to take a look at. So I've put links into all of those images there. And that's everything. Thank you very much. I've got the details up there both for myself and also for the project-specific channels, and feel free to contact me.
Thanks so much, Elise. That was really informative. I do have some questions from the delegations for you. Is there still
Great.
opportunities for supply chain to get involved in the early planning studies?
Yes, there is. And we do undertake a good amount of, it's more independent at this stage than formalised, but we do undertake an assessment to try and make sure we are sourcing from locals where we can. Some of the studies that we've got going forward between now and construction are far more technical based than planning based. So it's things like geotechnical ground survey work. We need to undertake the finalisation of our cultural heritage surveys, and a lot of the design consultation that needs to go into all of those studies. So absolutely, that can be done as well, and you can register that through our website.
Wonderful. And looking at your local content tiers, we had the 3 tiers there. Does it extend to a 4th tier for Australian-based businesses?
To be honest, I haven't seen that come through. I'm just thinking of Caban in particular. But there would certainly be an incentive to hire within Australia wherever possible from a financial perspective. We don't enforce that as a specific criteria so far, to the best of my knowledge.
Okay. And is there any opportunity for investors to become involved in the project still?
Look, it's not something that we've closed the door on. We've looked at a range of different options. That sort of comes down in our strategy of how we go about community benefits, and one of those options is, rather than a community benefit fund, to look at a co-investment opportunity or a community investment opportunity. We won't make the exact call on that structure until we're ready to kick the project into operations. So it is still there. We haven't heard much of a push at the moment to go towards that structure.
So given that we're still in the planning phases, very early days, what's your greatest challenge right now?
We're moving soon, hopefully, out of approvals and into pre-construction. And so our challenge at the moment is to make sure that our due diligence approach on the design of this wind farm is absolutely top-notch. And that means a lot of work on civils and making sure our civils design is as best as we can make it right now. And that would obviously be refined with our EPC. And also making sure we know everything from cyclone risk assessment, flood levels, down to soil erosion and the resistivity in the soil to make sure our cable sizing is accurate. So it's very technical at the moment and very much focused on design.
It sounds like a very exciting opportunity for the local supply chain in Greater Central Queensland.
For sure. Thank you very much.
Are you undertaking your own internal environmental assessments? Do you have that capacity at Neoen Australia, or are you sourcing those services locally as well?
We outsource our environmental assessments. I think that's actually a requirement, but I'm not sure. It has to be undertaken by ecologists. So we have Umwelt leading the work on that, and they've actually supported us through the Thunderbolt Energy Project as well in New South Wales. We've got a fairly long-standing relationship with Umwelt. We've undertaken about 3 years of ecology assessments on the site.
Okay. And you'll be hanging around and heading to your booth for Neoen Australia to engage with the delegation if they have any further questions?
For sure. As long as I click the right buttons, I'll try to get there.
You and me both, Elise. I will invite you to head to your booth now, and thank you so much. What an exciting project and an amazing presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.